Do you have a lot of back taxes that you owe? I get a lot of questions from clients all the time regarding taxes and things of that nature. And, let me go ahead and start off this conversation with just some ground rules. Number one, the IRS will never make a phone call to your house. They're not going to call you on your cell phone and say that you owe money. 9 times out of 10, if you are receiving any type of call that is not from the Internal Revenue Service, the Internal Revenue Service communicates with clients via letter. They will send you a letter in the mail, and it's going to say Internal Revenue Service. If you owe state taxes, every state operates differently, and some states will, put a freeze on your account. Some states can even suspend your driver's license and things of that nature. But those are two different things. But let me go ahead and give you some very, very, very good information that I think can help you. Number one, if you owe under $50,000, do not, and I mean, hear me closely, do not go take, $30,000 out of your account and go give the IRS a $30,000 payment. Now, again, I'm not telling you to avoid your tax liability. That's not what I'm doing. But if you owe under $50,000, the IRS will allow you to make an online payment agreement where you can go into your IRS account and set up a payment agreement for you to go ahead and repay that. And you can, as long as you have an agreement on file and you're actually paying the Internal Revenue Service on a monthly basis, they're not going to do anything to you. All right. Number two, if you owe over $50,000, what I want you to understand is you can actually contact the IRS and they can actually set up what's called an installment agreement with you if it's over $50,000. Again, you would contact the IRS and you would have to submit form 9465, which is the installment agreement form. And what they're going to do is allow you to make monthly payments as long as they can take the money directly out of your account. You will be fine, right? No one's going to come seize your assets and things of that nature. Now, let's just say that, you owe a whole lot of money and they've proven that you owe a whole lot of money. And for whatever reason, you don't agree with the amount of penalties, if you will. You can submit what's called, Form 843, which is a claim for refund and request for abatement, right? And basically what that means is they will be able to waive those penalties for you, especially if it's your first time, you've been in compliance with them for the last 3 years, et cetera, et cetera. They will go ahead and, oftentimes, allow you to submit that Form 843 and remove some of those penalties for you. The last thing that you can do is what's called an offer in compromise. That means that they have you dead to rights. You owe all of the money. And instead of you, having to pay, let's call it $200,000 in taxes, you can file what's called an offer in compromise. And basically what is that? That's basically saying that you're not going to be able to, you can't afford to pay that entire amount. And what they will do is allow you to pay a lesser amount. Now, again, and I want to be very clear because I get a lot of questions about that. And people say, man, I don't want the trouble from the IRS. I don't want to be audited and things of that nature. I know a lot of times people think that if you are audited, it is your tax professional's fault. That's not the case all the time. Let me tell you why you can be audited. Number one, if you claim expenses that the IRS can't substantiate. In other words, if you claim expenses for, let's call it contractor pay. Well, if you don't give that contractor a 1099 and they don't have any record of that person filing their own personal taxes, submitting a 1099 from your company, then that can actually raise questions. And they would actually, and again, they would send you a letter saying that, hey, we have disqualify this expense because we can't substantiate the expense, it is your job to prove to them that you actually paid a contractor. And let me go ahead and give you this bit of information. The IRS always looks to the source of the expense. What do I mean by that? A lot of times people will say, well, I got my QuickBooks profit and loss statement in my general ledger. Can I submit that? You have to understand that you input information into QuickBooks. Typically, the IRS looks for the source, meaning that you actually had that money taken out of your bank account. So they're going to ask to look for bank statements. Nothing more, nothing less. If you say that you have utility bills, use as an example, then what they would do is they would look for a utility bill. Let's say that the utility bill was $300 in the month of June. What they would ask you for is, let me see your bank statement for the month of June where that payment came out of your bank account. Nothing more, nothing less. The IRS is not coming knock on your door like if they are the CIA, the FBI, and seize all your assets. If you get letters from the IRS, the worst thing that you can do is just ignore them. Don't ignore the letter. If they have a question, just give them an answer. Nothing more, nothing less. And I guarantee you, if you communicate with the IRS, you can remove that burden off of your shoulders because they're going to work with you, right? I advise you to not look to place the blame. It's not your tax preparer's fault, that your tax refund is delayed or whatever the case is. You have to understand the IRS, in my opinion, no offense, right? I think they still work in the Flintstone ages. They are extremely slow. They're going to always be slow. They're going to always take their time. They are not on your time clock. And when you're thinking about getting information from them, they're going to always send you a letter. Sometimes those letters, by the time you get the letter, it's 3, 4, 5 months later, right? And have you ever noticed why whenever you are audited, you're not audited for the current year, you're always audited for years back? That should give you a clear indication of how slow the IRS moves. All right? If you are amending a return, that's going to take even longer. And there's nothing your tax preparer can do to make the IRS move any faster. I cannot stress that. All tax professionals can do is call the IRS on your behalf to get a status update. They cannot make the Internal Revenue Service move any faster at all. It don't matter how many times they can call every single day. They ain't gonna move any faster. All right. So look, if you owe the IRS under $50,000, remember you can set up an online payment agreement. You don't have to talk to anybody. You can just set it up. If you owe over $50,000, you would have to set up what's called an installment agreement. And 9 times out of 10, and I mean this, if you see these big old balances that you owe, chances are a lot of that is penalties. You can actually request to waive those penalties, especially if it's for good reason, right? Especially if there's a natural disaster, especially if you were sick. There's a lot of things that can factor into why the IRS will remove those penalties. So overall, don't find yourself stressing, pulling your hair out, etc., etc. I can go on and on about this conversation, but just know that the Internal Revenue Service is not the boogeyman. Now, when it comes to your state taxes, every state, it operates differently. And I can't stress that enough. Every state operates differently. When it comes to your state, if your state says that you owe taxes or whatever the case is, you have to understand initially, if you have a business, and you register a business in the state that you are in. Let's just call it, I don't know, let's call it a food truck business for the sake of the conversation. Well, whenever you register that business in that state and you put in your NAICS code, NAICS, NAICS code, and that is the North American Industry Classification System that basically lets the state know that you operate in a certain field. Whenever you receive a bill, if you will, that is typically an estimate based on the industry that you're working in. Once you file your annual report, you have to file taxes every year to the Internal Revenue Service, and you also have to file what's called an annual report with the state that you live in. Whenever you file your annual report and you give them the money that you made or you did not make, that's when they are going to say, okay, instead of us charging you what we estimate based on your industry that you should pay, we're either going to not charge you anything, by filing a no tax due report or filing zero, right? Because you didn't do it, you didn't have any activity, or you didn't make any money. Then they're going to remove that amount that you owe. But it is your responsibility as a business owner. It is your responsibility as a business owner to let the state know every single year whether you made money, didn't make money, whether you still own the company, you sold the company, who's the manager. Like, it's your job to notify the state every single year. Whether your state has taxes or your state does not have taxes, every business has to file an annual report. It is your job as a business owner to make sure that you are in compliance. Otherwise, states will classify your business as not in good standings. They will say that your business has been closed for tax forfeiture. Whatever terminology that they use, they are going to basically say that you are not in compliance with the state. Sure, you filed your taxes at the IRS, but you also have to file an annual report with the state that you live in. I hope this information helps somebody. If you are interested in learning more about how to structure a business, how to write a business plan, how to build a legacy, right? We actually have a class. It's almost like going to a business college. You're going to get a business owner degree. And believe it or not, it's $699. Where else can you go learn everything about business for $699? But I get it. You feel that everybody and their mama selling you something. No, I'm trying to help change your life. Visit www.macenterpriseconsulting.com. Let us help you become the best business owner that you can possibly be. Stop operating your business blindly. Stop just waking up and saying, you know what, I'm a business owner. Stop doing that to yourself. I believe the information that I've just shared with you now can be very beneficial to you. Just imagine the information that you get in this class. What's the worst thing that can happen by you taking this class? That you just become educated? Come on. Stop allowing things to happen to you and make things happen. Have an amazing day. Peace.